So it was extremely important for us to see how committed those individuals are when they make promises, how they're going to be with that. How authentic they are. Are they conceptions of various different fragments of reality congruent or not? Are they truthful or not?
Welcome, everyone, to the Being Framework Leadership Foundation series. I'm Enrique Acosta Gonzalez, and I am joined by Ashkan Tashber as we begin episode 10, the Being Profile, the ontometric assessment tool of the Being Framework. Let's go into the things that we covered in our previous episode. We covered confusion, vulnerability, and anxiety associated with not knowing, the limitations to our sensations, perceptual structure, and rationality, recreation of the exposure triangle. What are we referring to by the word authenticity? Meanings versus words, authenticity quadrant, self image, persona, opinion, beliefs, and authenticity in the context of leadership. And in this episode, we will be going over the being framework ontological model and the research behind it. What is being profile? How did it get put together? Now, Ashkan, I'm excited about this particular episode because it is the thing that brought me to N Genesis, the being profile, so profound and so impactful to me. And so I can't wait to get into this specific episode.
Thank you very much, Enrique, and thank you everyone who's watching this or listening to us. So we've gone through a kind of journey so far in the last nine episode, and this is episode 10, still part of module one. So the intention is we're going to focus on the being profile or the ontometric assessment tool um, that that is there in being framework. We've touched on it here and there, particularly when we talked about the ontological model, the layers of the framework. But this is a dedicated episode for the being profile, and also a little bit of a background behind the ontological model and how it was got put together. So we're going to go through that. The next episode, we will be discussing self discovery course, one of the pathways that a person can actually leverage the the being profile, the assessment tool. And in the next one, we will be talking about the last layer of the being framework, which is the transformation methodology. And that's the groundwork that we've promised in the beginning of the series. From there, we go to module two, and we will be having more conversational discussions on the daily challenges that leaders deal with. So far we've talked about the framework, the being framework layers. We talked about the ontological model, which is basically, uh, simply put, a map of qualities that all of us human beings relate to. Um, and and then we talked about another layer, which is the tool. Now, at the heart of the tool sits being profile, an assessment tool that it measures your relationship with all of these 31 different aspects of being, how you relate to them. Yeah, and provide like the ontological model provides the distinctions, individual distinctions for each and every of these aspects of being, and then being profile is going to use the distinction, use a series of questions that are strategically designed to measure how how you relate to each and every of these individual qualities. That's basically what the being profile is there to do. So if we look into the actual ontological model, we said that these 31 qualities are categorized in this construct for us to understand it better in four. different layers. So we had the meta factors we've gone through: awareness, integrity, effectiveness, in the last episodes, and we've covered all moods. Um, like we had a dedicated episode on moods quite briefly. So if you really wanted to go in depth in all of them, it would have been like we actually needed way more time, but that was not the intention, as we've created from the beginning of this series. So we've gone through the moods quite briefly so that you have a better sense of what do we mean when we talk about each and every of these moods. And we've covered the authenticity, because it plays a very, very major role, as an example of a primary way of being. Now, as we've mentioned from the get go in this series, the intention is not to go through every and each of these aspects of being. We do have the distinctions and the content around them in the books, the being book and human being books, as well as there are dedicated courses that you can basically go and then go through each and every of these different distinctions and then see how you relate to them. But um, as we go, the conversations around some of these aspects of being are going to come up, and we will discuss them as we go.
So Ashkan, so you've created this being profile, and there's so many distinctions and all the different layers. But how did you come up specifically with the ones represented in the profile?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. And so the thing is, when it comes to research, first, I want to make this clear. We have academic research and we have professional research. And what I've done behind the Being framework is mainly professional research. And let me share a little bit of the background there, why even that became a thing. Yeah. So we are venture builders at Ingenesis. Like Ingenesis Ventures, a venture building business. In a simple language, we're there to support different businesses, startups, mainly mature startups, to go to the next level. Yeah, sometimes this is startups, these businesses, they need funding. Sometimes they require connections and network and partners. Sometimes it's the advice around certain decisions that they're going to make. And sometimes it's technology, like they need to build certain pieces of technology. And sometimes it's basically the technicality around some of the things that they do around their businesses, like how to make a better business model, how to create a better connection with their um, potential clients, create lead generation systems, and so on. Yeah. So now, in many cases, when it comes to us working with investors and we want to encourage them to invest their, put their monetary capital into these startups, it's extremely important for us to not to only understand if they have a good technology or not, if it's a tech-based business, if they have all the things under their belt in terms of how to do marketing systems, how to create funnels, how to create an authentic brand, etc., etc. Um, it also it is also very important who and how they are being. Yeah. Now, at the time, I was not able to articulate it this well that I can do it today after many years that being framework is there. But the initial inquiry was, mm, we were seeing that no matter how much monetary capital you invest in these startups and businesses, no matter how well you can communicate techniques of sales projection and business modeling, et cetera, it doesn't matter if you provide all of these resources and knowledge to them. At the end of the day, what's going to make it or break it is who and how they are being, you know, in how they relate to various different aspects of the business, how they relate to themselves, how they relate to sales, money, service, and product. how they relate to them, and then how they act upon it through the actions that they take and the behaviors that they manifest. Basically, that's going to determine in a great part the level of success. And that success matters when you are trying to encourage investors to go and then put their sweat money, like the money that they generated through other means, and put that money, that capital, into these startups. So it was extremely important for us to see how committed those individuals are when they make promises, how they're going to be with that, how authentic they are. Are they conceptions of various different fragments of reality congruent or not? Are they truthful or not? um, and it was very important for us to see how assertive they are, how well they can communicate and express themselves, because that's going to manifest itself in how they're going to build a relationship with their potential customers or client or users. So you see where I'm going with this. Now, at the time, my team and I, we looked into the existing psychometric tools, different disciplines, because we constantly needed to decode the people that we were interacting with. You know, we needed to see, if they are genuine within their intentions or not, because there are times that it happens that some of these startups, um, they just like that's their lifestyle. They just want to um, take the investors' money, and they leave that lifestyle. Unfortunately, that's the case sometimes. When we started looking into the existing psychometric tests, assessment tools, different disciplines, how to read people, so we realized that there is a massive missing. Now, this doesn't mean that the existing literature, the existing tools were out of merit, but they were not giving us that kind of a confidence that we needed, that we can encourage investors, or we as investors, we tip thousands of dollars or millions of dollars into these businesses. So the ethos of in Genesis was at the time, and still is, supporting um, growth through entrepreneurship, and in that context, it was extremely important for us to read human being, understand human being better. Yeah, doesn't make sense, Enrique? Like, how does it land for you?
Yeah, no, I see the value in getting deep within the structure of the entrepreneurship, because a lot of it's not just money on the line when you're talking
Yeah,
about business. There are people, resources, and all the future of that business. So to get deep into these distinctions and these different
yeah,
values that we kind of gauge through this profile, it's very important.
yeah, yeah. So now at the time, even the intention was not to um, commercialize being profile and make it available to people. But so let me go back, and then when in the beginning I was talking about the difference between the academic research and professional research. So with professional research, there is a practicality element uh, at its core. Yeah. So as I said, like there was a specific business problem that we were dealing with as venture builders, that we needed to address, and we needed an answer for, convincing answer, so that then we can choose which between these teams and the startups that we need to work with. Yeah. So the risk was quite high, and it is high. See, for a person to be an investor, they need to be at the stage in their life that they have accumulated enough wealth, so that then they can go in and invest. Now, if therefore it's normally, like, it's a kind of generalization, but it sits you in a certain age category. Yeah. Now there are outliers, definitely, but mostly they need to be old enough, you would say, that they have lived enough so that they have enough money to invest. And it's a very short career, because, for example, if you're an angel investor, you start investing, but then in average it may take around 7 years for a startup to be lifted up to the point that you can call it the successful business, if um, despite all these statistics around failure of majority of the businesses and startups out there, some may succeed. So basically, the decisions that you have is very limited, and you need to be very careful with the type of decisions you're making, because you don't have a long period of time in that career. So therefore, due to the nature of that, this problem is there, and we needed to come up with something to that provides answer. No, I'm not saying that like we get people to do the being profile or we assess them through the being discourse, and then that's the only thing that we take into consideration. But it greatly helped. And now, so therefore, this is not an academic research behind it, but it's a professional research behind it. Now, at the end of the day, we're using the same, you're tapping into the same principles, but there are clear differences there. If you're an academic, very likely your concern is going to be just discovery of new pieces of knowledge and contributing to the existing literature. If you are more inclined to be a professional researcher, then you have a problem at hand within an organization, within an industry, and then you're going to provide answer to that and provide um, like tools, create constructs and frameworks and methods of dealing with things. Yeah. Now, so uh, in terms of methodology, so one of the question was like, why, how, which qualities are the most important ones? Yeah. So there was no theory in the beginning because I was tapping into the grounded theory. Grounded theory, simply put, is a research method in mostly it's used in the social sciences that involves developing theories based on data collected during the research process rather than starting with a preconceived theory. It involves collecting data and analyzing it to identify patterns and themes, and then forming a theory that is grounded in the collected data. Hence, we call it grounded theory. Basically, you don't necessarily need to have a hypothesis and from the beginning. You don't need to have a theory and then go and then seek for evidences, but basically you directly go and start analyzing data. It can be interviews, data that is being gathered through interviews. It can be analysis of text and existing content. In my case, was mostly video content. So you go and then analyze you gather data, you analyze the data, and then you seek the patterns um, um, that are going to provide some insight to you. Yeah. So therefore, a kind of a very high level assumption was there should be perhaps certain patterns and certain qualities that matter when it comes to effectiveness of leaders. Yeah. So therefore, I started looking into over 300 individuals that I call them highest achievers. Some of the people they have the track record. Mostly they are entrepreneurs, but there are people in other realms as well. So um, I've started looking into the existing video interviews with them because, like, ideally we wanted to have interviews, individual interviews with every single of them. People like Elon Musk, people like Jeff Bezos, and Oprah Winfrey, and others. But it could have been really hard to create those opportunities so that we can interview them one by one. But luckily, we had a good number, good amount of interviews, existing interviews with them. So that was one big part of the source of data that basically of used. So we're going to actually look into that with our audience today. We're going to bring some videos, and I'm going to showcase how that analysis can work. Obviously, we don't want to go into the depth of that, but we'll practice that a little bit today together. So yeah, going through it's a qualitative research. Yeah. So let me be very clear when we're talking about the qualitative research I've mentioned. So qualitative research is a method of inquiry that focuses on understanding the way people interpret and make sense of their experiences and the world around them. It is used in various academic disciplines, especially in social sciences, but also in market research, user experience design, and research around that, and other fields. Um, this type of research is characterized by its aim to gather in depth insight into people's attitude, behavior, values, routines, culture, and lifestyle. So, in qualitative research method includes interviews, focus groups, observation, and text or content analysis, amongst other type of things. These methods enable a researcher to collect rich, detailed data that are often descriptive in nature, unlike quantitative research, which seeks to quantify data and often uses statistical analysis. Qualitative research is more about understanding concepts, thoughts, and experiences in detailed, nuanced manner. Particularly it's particularly useful for exploring complex issues, understanding social processes, and gaining insight into people's motivations and feelings. So yeah, going through it's a qualitative research. It's not quantitative. It's not about the statistics. It's not about statistical data necessarily. In order for us to know which qualities matter, yeah, it's qualitative. It's basically looking into these individuals and then read the patterns and then see what patterns are repeating, what are the commonalities. Yeah, so that's like the part that helped me to identify which qualities perhaps matter the most. Yeah. So, for example, in the beginning, there were way more qualities that I was looking into, and tapping into analytical thinking, seeing that which of these qualities may overlap with each other, and then ultimately a number of these qualities that I found that it's quite in common amongst these highest achievers. Basically, try to put them together so that take in that shape the first version of the ontological model. Yeah. At the same time, then it was not only the qualitative analysis of these highest achievers using their existing video content and tapping into grounded theory, as I said, to identify these patterns, but also I've looked into some cross-cultural studies. For example, this character strengths and virtue. This is a comprehensive body of work by Christopher Peterson and Seligman. So basically, in this is one example of cross-cultural studies that I've tapped into, and there are others, and I have the references on my website if someone is interested. So in this study, for example, they've looked into different ethnicities, they've looked into different faiths, they've looked into different cultures, and they identified their like 24 different qualities that I think they've categorized it in six major top categories that these qualities matter to cultures, like they go cross culture. And basically, I've also looked into that. Apart from that, as the ontological model was being shaped, I've worked with professional coaches, professional leadership coaches, transformational coaches that work with executives, people like John Smallwood. John Smallwood is the head of Genesis Coach Academy today. At the time, he was working with us, and then we shaped a group of a cohort of coaches, and actually those interactions with the actual users of the being profile at the time, and as I was shaping the ontological model and building the measurement tool, it was greatly useful. Many Some of the qualities that today we have in the ontological model and the being profile was brought up by them. For example, forgiveness was not even in my radar, but then it was brought up, and then how important that is. And as these professional coaches emphasized as they work with executives, uh, this conversation around forgiveness will come up often. Or, for example, choosing between self awareness or going broader and then talk about awareness in general. And there were other examples. For example, we had in the beginning we had communication as a way of being, but then we changed that to presence. So basically, if I want to recap, so there were these qualitative study of these over 300 highest achievers using their mostly their video content interviews that are available from them of them, tapping into the grounded theory. And the second part was looking into the cross cultural studies, similar to character strength and virtue theory, and also shaping a cohort of professional coaches and psychologists that I work with, and basically these are the three major um, sources that I actually used in order for me to shape the ontological model. Yeah. So, Enrique, do you think that it's going to add value if I will bring some of these video interviews and actually we'll look into it and try to analyze it together so that our audience see what I mean when I talk about like looking into the existing interviews with people of high caliber and the highest achievers?
Yeah, absolutely. The research and looking at those videos real time, discussing them, will also encourage not only those that are looking at the being profile to participate, but also to know the depth of the research actually conducted for this. So it's always good to see the actual root content that facilitated the being profile.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I just chose one piece of interview um, Lex Friedman had with Jeff Bezos. This is a very recent interview. This particular interview was not used. My intention is not to clearly show like which interviews exactly are used, but this is just an example. Yeah, this is just an example. This is part of a recent interview with Jeff Bezos, and let's watch it. Let's watch it. It's around like authenticity and truth telling culture. Yeah.
What does it take to be the guy or gal who brings up the point that this proxy might be outdated? I guess what does it take to have a culture that enables that in the meeting? Because that's a very uncomfortable thing to bring up at a meeting. We all showed up here. It's a Friday.
This is such. You have just asked $1 million question. So this is what.
So as we're watching this, I would like to comment on it a little bit. So you can clearly see that when a question is coming up, Jeff Bezos is one of these highest achievers. Would call it $1 million question, meaning that indicating that this is an extremely important thing. Yeah.
If I generalize what you're asking, you're talking in general about truth telling.
Yeah.
And we humans are not really truth seeking animals. We are social animals.
Yeah, we are.
And, take you back in time 10,000 years and you're in a small village. If you go along to get along, you can survive. You can procreate. If you're the village truth teller, you might get clubbed to death in the middle of the night. Truths are often, they don't want to be heard because important truths can be uncomfortable, they can be awkward, they can be exhausting,
impolite,
yes,
all that kind of stuff.
challenging. They can make people defensive, even if that's not the intent. But any high performing organization, whether it's a sports team, a business, a political organization, an activist group, I don't care what it is, any high performing organization has to have mechanisms and a culture that supports truth telling. One of the things you have to do is you have to talk about that. And you have to talk about the fact that it takes energy to do that. And you have to talk to people. You have to remind people it's okay that it's uncomfortable. You to literally tell people it's not what we're designed to do as humans. It's not really. It's kind of a side effect. We can do that.
So this is actually quite matching our empirical data, but the data that we've gathered so far using the being profile in the last couple of years, thousands of people that have completed being profile, and you can see, when you're being scored from 0 to 10 when it comes to, let's say, authenticity. Let's imagine that in being profile, you're being scored 5 out of 10 when it comes to authenticity. Yeah, so that basically shows the health of your relationship with authenticity. Now, um, the part that is missing, that can be interpreted as missing, or we call it shadow, the trouble side, that's actually the growth potential. Now, so this acknowledgement, the vulnerability and authenticity, in acknowledging that we're not actually truth seeking being. That's what Jeff Bezos is also mentioning. That's due to his experience of working with all these people and then building $1 trillion empire. So uh, his experience is basically saying that, like, we're not truth seeking individuals, but that is required, and that's very important. And then he continues, like, we'll watch it as we go. And yeah, so let's keep watching.
And it's not how we survive. We mostly survive by being social animals, and being cordial and cooperative, and that's really important. And so there's science is all about truth telling. It's actually a very formal mechanism for trying to tell the truth. And even in science, you find that it's hard to tell the truth. Right. Even you're supposed to have a hypothesis and test it and find data and reject the hypothesis and so on. It's not easy.
But even in science, there's like the senior scientists and the junior scientists, and then
Correct.
there's a hierarchy of humans where
It's
the
still
somehow
social.
seniority somehow seniority matters in the
Yes.
scientific process, which it
And
should
that's
not.
true inside companies too.
Yeah.
And so you want to set up your culture so that the most junior person can overrule the most senior person if they have data.
So this is another part that, as you can clearly see, um, so he values data or authenticity or congruence of our conception of these different fragments of reality. Yeah. And he acknowledges that there is this power dynamic there, that it may not let the least senior person with data, with accurate understanding of whatever is going on in a project, in whatever basically they're doing. But you can clearly see that he values authenticity or the congruence of um, even the least senior person in the team. Like, so he basically values the authenticity or congruence of under some matter, even if it comes from the least senior person. So he's not valuing the seniority of people, but he's valuing the data and the accuracy of the data. Yeah.
And that really is about trying to, there are little things you can do. So for example, in every meeting that I attend, I always speak last. And I know from experience that, you know, if I speak first, even very strong-willed, highly intelligent, high judgment participants in that meeting will wonder, well, if Jeff thinks that, I came in this meeting thinking one thing, but maybe I'm not right. And so you can do little things like, if you're the most senior person in the room, go last. Let everybody else go first. In fact,
So yeah, so the point here is, like, when we observe these interviews and then we analyze them, We try to see what's the experience of that highest achievers, like the people that they were being studied. Now, one thing that is extremely important for me to bring up, Enrique, to you and an audience, is see these people of influence, highest achievers, as I call them, they can be really controversial, with what they say, how they are, who the public know them to be, and how their intentions are being read by the public. There are conspiracy theory around them. There is like there's some people they so love them, some people so hate them. So the thing is, what I have looked into in my study was not seeing it from the benevolence perspective. I was not sitting there from a moral perspective judging if they have the best intentions at all. Yeah. So that's excluded from the body of research, the work that I've done. Yeah. I was not judging if their intention is a good intention or a bad intention. The thing that I was being studied was like, why is it that they are effective to the point that they can build these multi-billion-dollar businesses or trillion-dollar businesses, creating tremendous amount of wealth not only for themselves but mostly for other people, creating job opportunities, etc., etc. Now, of there are certain lazy um, description of that, the explanation for like why is that, like going back to the systems and because of capitalism. That's not basically what I talk about here. Yeah. So we also don't talk about like the goodness or the badness of their intentions. Yeah. It's not like looking into it from benevolence or altruistic perspective. What we're looking into, why is it that no matter if you consider the intention to be bad intention or good intention, why is it that they are succeeding? Why is it that they are effective in fulfilling the very intentions they set for themselves and for their organizations? And that's like self-evident. So, and then, sometimes when people have moral judgments and that not agreeing with their intentions, I'll go, fine. You become that effective person, be that integrous person, effective person, and then you come up with good intentions to fulfill. Yeah, but another thing that I would like to bring up is authenticity. As I talk about it, is not just about telling. Truth telling is one major component of one of the clear manifestations of you having a healthy relationship with authenticity. Yeah. But a big part of it, as it was being touched on in a way by Jeff Bezos in this interview, was like a person who has the data. And I'm inferring that implies that the accurate data or valid data coming from the least senior person in the team should actually be valued way more than a person with seniority and authority basically override that. So I would like us to look into the a second video. Yeah. So this is this particular video is video with an interview with Elon Musk. Now, so before we actually watch this, again, some of these conversations these guys are having are quite controversial. We don't necessarily want to go there. These videos are chosen just to showcase how these ways of being, these aspects of being, manifests it themselves in how that highest achiever, one of the highest achievers, would be relating to. Yeah.
Free speech is meaningless unless you allow people you don't like to say things you don't like. Otherwise, it's irrelevant. And if at the point at which you lose free speech, it doesn't come back.
I think the issue some people have is that a lot of people were brought back. I mean, some people were brought back who were previously banned for spreading things like QAnon conspiracies. You have people like Andrew Tate who were brought back, who were previously banned for things like hate speech. Do you think you prioritize freedom of speech over misinformation and hate speech?
Well, who's to say that something is
So this is a part that, so they're talking about freedom of speech and then misinformation, and one of the things that is being brought up by Elon Musk is what do you mean by misinformation, and that's a very important thing. That's something that we have it in the distinction authenticity, where you say that are you going to be lenient and fickle with what you perceive, or you're going to check the validity of whatever is being said. And part of it is how the language is being used. Yeah. So my understanding is here, Elon Musk is actually quite attentive and trying to be as present as possible to see what is this point that this person is making, and he's not letting his assumption of the word, because like that the way that that person may relate to the word misinformation would be different to the way that he does. We talked about perceptions of meanings in the last episodes, so he's trying to clarify what that is, and that shows me his relationship with authenticity first.
Information. Um, who's the arbiter of that? Is it the BBC?
And you literally asking me.
Yes.
Well, no,
Who is the
you
arbiter?
are the arbiter on Twitter because you own Twitter.
Yes, I'm saying who is to say that one person's misinformation is another person's information? At the point at which you say that there is this is misinformation, like who is going
You
to
accept that
decide that?
misinformation can be dangerous, that it can cause real
Yes.
world harms, that it can potentially cause
Yeah, so the point I'm trying to make is the BBC itself has at times published things that are false. Do you agree that that has occurred?
I'm quite sure the BBC have said things before that turn out to not be true.
Correct.
In its whatever it is, 100-year history. I'm quite sure.
Yes. Even if you aspire to be accurate, there are times when you will not be.
We've spoken to people very recently who were involved in moderation, and they just say there's not enough people to police this stuff, particularly around hate speech in the company. Is that
Well, what
something
hate
that you want
speech
to
are you
address?
talking about? I mean, you use Twitter.
Right.
Do you see a rise in hate speech?
I mean,
But just a personal anecdote, like what do you? I don't.
personally, for you, I would see I get more of that kind of content. Yeah, personally, but I'm not going to talk to the rest of for the rest of Twitter.
You
But
see more
personally,
hate speech personally.
I would say I would see more hateful content in that.
Content you don't like or hateful. What do you mean to describe a hateful thing?
Yeah, I mean, just content that will solicit a reaction, something that may include something that is slightly racist or slightly sexist, those kinds of things.
So you think if something is slightly sexist, it should be banned?
No,
Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying anything. I'm
Well, I'm just
saying
curious. I'm trying to understand what you mean by hateful content. And I'm asking for specific examples. Um, and you just said that if something is slightly sexist, that's hateful content. Does that mean that it should be banned?
well, you've asked me whether my feed, whether it's got less or more. I'd say it's got slightly more.
That's
But
why I'm asking for examples.
Right.
Can you name one example?
I honestly don't. Honestly,
So here, the key is trying to really understand what this person is saying, yeah. So that he can tell, like, is he pushing certain agenda, or genuinely like have some concern. And Elon Musk, like in many other videos of him, I've seen that he's actually genuinely trying to find the bugs in his system, whether it's him or like his businesses and everything. So I think that in many cases I've seen that him being thrilled to identify if something is not working, and he's trying to dig to see, like what this person is saying, and if there is any constructive feedback there that he can take on, perhaps, yeah. But he's being frustrated now, seeing that this person is not being a contribution in that.
You can't name a single example.
I'll tell you why, because I don't actually use that for you feed anymore because I just don't particularly like it.
You said
a lot of people are quite similar. I only look at
hang on a second. You said you've seen
following.
more hateful content, but you can't name a single example, not even one.
I'm not sure I've used that feed for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and
Well, then how did you see that hateful content?
Because I've been using Twitter since you've taken it over for the last 6 months.
Okay, so then you must have at some point seen the for you hateful content. I'm asking for one example.
Right.
And you can't give a single one.
And I'm saying
I say so that you don't know what you're talking about.
Really?
Yes, because you can't give a single example of hateful content, not even one tweet. And yet you claimed that the hateful content was high.
Well,
that's a false.
No, what I claimed,
you just lied.
What I claim was there are many organizations that say that.
Okay, so I think this is enough of this. So basically, what again, like I'm talking about the authenticity and how that person is trying to really understand what is going on. He doesn't want to be fickle, lenient, just accept whatever is coming in. I don't think that it's necessarily he's being defensive, but that's a different conversation, or if he's being frustrated or not. But down deep there, like he's trying to see where this person is coming from, like is it valid or not? If perhaps it's valid, like I've seen this pattern in him and like other people of influence that I've studied them, the highest achievers. So basically, these are some of the videos that it can be analyzed to see if they value this thing that we call authenticity. I would like to play one more video, and we take it from there. Yeah.
When you look at successful people, you have talked to everyone in the world who is successful. What would you say is the one common characteristic that you find gets people to where they want to go?
The most important question is the people get to where they want to go because they know where they want to go.
Oh, wow.
And most people don't know where they want to go. Most people, a lot of people, are going and being driven by what they think they should do,
right,
what other people say they should do, what they have carried in their mind for a long time they should do. But the most important question you can ever ask yourself is, what do I really want?
Wow.
And the answer to that, once you can establish for yourself what the answer to that is, and have everything you do, every choice you make, move you in the direction of what you say your vision is.
Right.
Yeah. And when you do that, the forces of life rise up to meet you. The reason why most people have such chaotic lives is because they're living in chaos in their head. And as soon as you get clear, it clears up.
Yeah, so that's another video, and then talk. We have the conversations around awareness, being conscious of our consciousness, that clarity that matters. So basically, when we look into these videos, we clearly see that there are patterns that are going, and at the end of the day, like it's grounded theory, it's qualitative research methodology, and you cannot completely remove the the author or creator. So in this case, like these are my interpretations at the end of the day. In choosing which qualities matter, looking into three things. One, the videos with the interviews with the highest achievers, an analysis of that, the cross-cultural studies such as the one we showed, the virtue and strength character, and three, in working with practical professional coaches, cohort of coaches that we have shaped, and then we grow that community, as you know, Enrique, and constantly working with them in refinement of basically the model. Now, yeah, and as by now we've a couple of times we mentioned them, like all of these qualities are described in these two books. If you want to start, I highly recommend you to start with Human Being book, which is in a more linear narrative, simpler to read. And in the first part of the book, we go through certain philosophical underpinning, and then we go through each and every of these aspects of being. The being book is way more technical, like it goes more in depth, and that's basically kind of around 700 pages of book that it's an exposition of the totality of the framework. Yeah, so that's there. Now,
Well, now I realize, Ashkan, where you got all of that data from, but where did you get the distinctions from to specifically line those out?
yeah, yeah. So yeah, so basically, like one, so the first problem was like to come up with the combination of qualities that matter. We discussed that. Then the next bit was okay. Now we need to go and then describe these qualities quite well. So I had an understanding of what they were, but then I started looking into the literature behind each and every of these qualities. Yeah. For example, when it comes to the moods, I've tapped into the body of work by Martin Heidegger, the German philosopher. He talked about moods or attunements, the mode of a state of mind. It talks about anxiety, care, and fear. Then later on, I added another mood to the list, vulnerability. So, for example, for vulnerability, one of the major sources that I've looked into, amongst many others, is Rene Brown. Yeah, Rene Brown, a notable research professor and author, delves into vulnerability, courage, and empathy in her TED Talks and books like The Gift of Imperfection. She emphasizes the importance of vulnerability for personal growth and stronger connections, and continue her research on authentic and resilient living at the University of Houston. So Rene Rene Brown's research focuses on vulnerability, shame, empathy, and courage, notably through qualitative studies and interviews with thousands to gauge vulnerability's effects on relationships, leadership, and self-improvement. So, looking into her body of work as an example, I was shaping my in-depth understanding of vulnerability. As I said, like this is one major study, but there were other studies that I've looked into, and then ultimately this led to the distinction and vulnerability. Now, we've refined the distinctions many times to the point that as we were working with more people, seeing how they perceive it, looking into like how these over 300 individuals that I've studied through analysis of their videos, how they relate to vulnerability. And basically, I pulled all that together, and then that shaped the distinctions that we see today. Yeah. Similarly, like for example, we don't want to go through every single of these qualities that we have, but just as examples, the four core aspects of being that we have: responsibility, or being primary cause of the matters; integrity, being committed to something bigger than you. So these are the terms. So, and authenticity. Yeah. So if you look into this study by Michael Jensen and Werner Erhard at Harvard Business School, which was published on SSRN, so they looked into the qualities that are extremely important in leadership and effective exercise of leadership. Yeah. So that study, I believe, was when they wanted to actually create a course at Harvard looking into how they can produce leaders, effective leaders. So, four of these qualities that they talk about in a body of work: one is authenticity, another one is integrity, the third one is being primary cause of matters, or what I call responsibility. And then they have another quality, they call it being committed to something bigger than you, which I broke it down in a divergent manner into two distinct quality: commitment and higher purpose in our model. Yeah. So basically, some of the qualities came from there. I've looked into that, and then I've expanded the body of knowledge. And then, for example, like for gratitude, I found this white paper, which is quite interesting, by Summer Allen, um, so from Berkeley University, and it talks about she talks about the science of gratitude. Yeah. Now again, this is not the only reference for gratitude, but that's a kind of a very interesting one amongst other studies that I've looked into in that literature. And then, like for example, like if you look into self-expression as one of the ways of being that we've looked into. We have I've looked into this book literally called Self-Expression by Mitchell Green, which was published by Oxford University Press, and so on. So for the rest of qualities, also I found the people that some they invested whole their life, or a big proportion of their life, into studying those different qualities. So, if I want to recap so far, so mainly we talked about the ontological model. We talked about how I've chosen those qualities that uh, I say that are quite important when it comes to leadership. I've looked into, I've tapped into grounded theory, qualitative research, professional research, and looking into the video content which was available, the interviews, and finding the patterns and commonalities. And second, I've looked into the cross-cultural um, studies, such as the one we talked about, the strength and character virtue theory behind it, and then I've also worked with professional cohort of coaches, and we're continuously working with them in our community so that we ensure that the practicality of that is being taken into consideration. So and then so once the number of qualities have been put together, I've looked into the literature behind each and every of them. I've tried to capture that, shape my congruent, authentic conception of each and every of them. So basically, we created distinctions. We've talked about distinctions a lot. I hope that now adding this background knowledge is going to help you put everything together. The distinction is the most concise version of that description of whatever quality we're talking about. In this case, vulnerability. The first paragraph is talking about what we mean by vulnerability. Yeah. What, and then in the second paragraph, we talk about how a healthy relationship with vulnerability would look like. And then in the third paragraph, we're creating a picture of an unhealthy relationship with vulnerability. Now, we have the distinction. And then if you go to the books, then there is one chapter dedicated to each and every of these qualities, and we'll discuss it there in a perhaps simple way. Yeah. And as I've explained, like I've looked into the literature of each of these different qualities to help me shape a more congruent, authentic conception so that then I can communicate it with others. Yeah. Now, so this is basically the thing behind the ontological model. Yeah. But how about the being profile as an assessment tool? Yeah. So, Enrique, would you like to share your experience with the being profile when you first experienced it before I go
Yeah,
into the background?
sure. Yeah, so as a trainer, consultant, coach, I had the opportunity to be exposed to and become aware of a lot of tools that are out there to help leaders in my capacity to help others grow in teams, individually, within families, and all of that. But I interviewed you on a show and I got exposed to the being profile. Now, I'll tell you that uh, initially, what drew me to it was the word being. I had always
Yeah,
been enamored with the question, why can't we just be? And so, in
yeah,
that pursuit of trying to answer that question, I found your book, I found your content, and then I took the being profile. It was mind blowing
yeah,
how much of myself I had not been aware of. Talk about awareness, right? How much of myself vulnerability was playing parts that maybe I did not want to play, and then so on and so forth. As I'm going through all
yeah,
these distinctions and all these qualities, I start to get a better picture of myself and how I was being with the
mm,
quality. And that is what really made the
yeah,
difference for me. And so,
yeah,
since that day, I've chosen to rely more on this tool to help
yeah.
individuals that come to me for assistance.
Sure, sure. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so yeah, so um, we don't want to go to too much in details when it comes to this because like to go through like how an assessment tool have been put together in its totality, it's going to be like very time consuming, but there is a white paper being prepared, and like it'll be available soon on that, like if any person is very interested in how like the assessment tool have been put together. But the intention in the next couple of minutes is to basically give you a little bit of background. No, so being profile is a ontometric profiling assessment tool. Yeah. So So you go through these 244 questions, and a report is generated with 31 scores, one per each quality or aspect of being that we measure in four different categories: meta factors, moods, primary ways of being, and secondary ways of being. Now, the assessment is not completely self-explanatory, and it requires a professional level of competency or proficiency to be able to leverage the tool. So that's why we have accredited practitioners that are professionally trained how to then support a person, complete um, the profile, and provide what we call debrief to them, so that they support them, so that there are other pathways to use the being profile as well, and I'm pretty sure Arya will walk everyone through them. But as for how it was got put together, obviously you know that the ontological model is there. We just talked about it in depth now. Then we came up with the questions based on the distinctions. Many rounds of refinements we had. Like in the beginning, it was an Excel sheet many years ago. We started using that. We started um, um, we had the professional coaches, highly professional coaches. Some they had background in mathematics, like for example John Law, a very good friend of mine, and he's a mathematician, the strategist and philosopher. And we had some of these coaches sitting there, and we go through the questions with people, and then we had some of these coaches scoring um, the individuals, and then we would get the algorithm to come up with the score, and then we're trying to see if the algorithm can basically match or get close to what these real professional coaches would be able to get to. That's one of the things that we have done. Anyway, so we go through that, and the first official version was created. In the beginning, we had the moods, we had 12 primary ways of being and no secondary ways of being. But then gradually the tool have been developed further and further, and we went through refinement rounds, recalibration of the scores. We went through refactoring, basically going and looking into each and every of the questions and see if there are any questions that everyone is getting it right in a way. Introducing the vulnerability concept into it, so that we can see if the person is being authentic in providing answers, or trying to exaggerate or try to deceive the tool. So basically, we've gone through rounds of things. Some are quite the standard when it comes to creating assessment tools, and there are certain unique and radical things that we have done. For example, it's not like one question is only dedicated to one certain quality. The qualities, the primary ways of being, are being seen in the context of moods. For example, when we're looking into someone's commitment, it's being seen in the context of care, anxiety, vulnerability, and fear individually. And that's like a very unique thing about this tool. Now, so what being profile is not a personality test. We're not categorizing people into various different personality types. It's not even tapping into personality type theory. It's not telling you that you're extroverted or introverted. And we're not categorizing people like that. It measures the health of your relationship with each and every of these qualities, and the health is being considered based of all that the study that we talked about, and basically like seeing how these highest achievers mostly they relate to it, that it worked for them. So there's this pragmatic approach behind this. So um, yeah, it's not a personality test, therefore. It's not a psychometric test in a sense that, see, human psyche is way more complex and way more subjective, in great part that we can say you go through this assessment questionnaire or survey, whatever it is, and then you are going to create a whole complete cognitive model of your mind. We know that that's not possible. We know that that's like inauthentic. So that it's not about that. Basically, we're saying that this is the whole cognitive model of your mind, how you as an individual are relating to various different things in life. Um, there's countless number of content in this world: the dog, the cat, the tree, your partner, your children, your colleague, in every single, the money, God, love, different meanings that are out there, and then you have a perception of them. What we're saying is this ontological model is a very tiny but very significant part of your cognitive model, how you're relating to the content of this work, specifically to these content, these qualities that we're talking about. Yeah. So basically, it's narrowing the scope and bringing your attention where to look at. Yeah, when it comes to you or other human beings. So that's basically what the ontological model does, and the ontological model is restricting the scope of what is to be measured for the being profile as the assessment tool. So therefore, we don't call it psychometric tool; we call it ontometric tool. Basically, we're saying that these are a number of qualities in this construct, and based on the distinctions provided, we're not defining these qualities; we're distincting them. We're saying that this is the distinction. We're trying to measure that you provide answers to those questions in when while doing the being profile, and it's going to measure the health of your relationship with them. And so far, thousands of people have used it from the time of commercialization, and RHS is going to provide more information to you about them. Yeah. Anything, Enrique, would you like to bring up before we go to Aria?
Yeah, no, I said I'm glad that you made the distinction that it's not a personality profile. There's a lot of tools out there that will measure other things that leaders are looking for, but this
Mm,
specific one, as you rightly said, is based about your relationship, right? And that's
yeah,
really where I think it really tugged on me when I took it because it
yeah.
addressed how I was being.
Yeah, yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so at the end of the day, it's just a smaller, a kind of sub-model within your whole comprehensive cognitive model as a human being. You are this cognitive agent, and then this is a part of whatever is going on in your mind, how you relate to 31 qualities. And as I said, it's tiny, but it's very significant. Now we know it because, after the being profile has been created, then we do have numbers. So the first part of the research, as I said, it was qualitative. Obviously, I had to interpret what qualities matters to these highest achievers. Yeah, but then when it comes to having a tool now, then we have data. We have empirical data as well. So um, thousands of people, they have completed the profile. They have paid to complete the profile. Most of them, they have worked with the trained coaches and practitioners that we have. So basically, and there are case studies, but at the end of the day, now we have data. We have the average, for example, the score that people get when it comes to assertiveness. Yeah, so we know that through that empirical data, we know that there are not many people out there that are assertive, which is matching the conclusion of many academic papers on assertiveness. You know, so yeah, so we do have that data, and the data is growing, and the data is giving us more and more insight as we go. Yeah. So this is a separate part to the discussion, which is not qualitative. Now we have now tangible data that is giving us more direct insight. Yeah. Okay. So if you're ready, we invite um, um, RH Hidasi, and RH Hidasi will walk you through some more information on the being profile and how it works.
Thank you for joining us on part one of the Being Profile. It has been great to get through all of the intricacies of what made the Being Profile what it is. Next week, we'll go into part 2, and Aria will be joining us in that part 2. But I want to remind everybody that this is part of a series that we're taking throughout the year. It is also part of a leadership course that you are welcome to join. It is complimentary, and I hope you'll do that. Ashkan, thank you so much for sharing what it took to make the Being Profile.
Thank you very much, Enrique, and thank you very much, everyone.